everyone, it's Samantha from Scrapmaster's Paradise, and today we're continuing on with our Wild Wednesday video series about the Silhouette Cameo. And today I'm talking about how to use an SVG file from start to finish. I'm going all the way from downloading to the finished die cut. So I'm in my downloads folder here. Wherever your files will be downloaded will just depend on what your setting is and what kind of computer you're using. So I'm using a Mac, and my downloads just automatically go in this downloads file. And I'm going to be cutting out this birthday cake. So I have this freebie file that I got from Miss Cake Cuttables on the 18th, and I unzipped the file. Here's one that zipped. I just double click on it and it starts the unzip process and makes the folder just like that. So I did the same thing with this birthday cake file. I'm going to click on the file here. It gives you instructions, it gives you the JPEG image, the PNG image, and then the SVG file. I've got that under my downloads file. I've got to open that with my program. I'm going to just go under File, Open, and I'm going to find that birthday cake. I've got to go under my downloads and find the one titled birthday cake. It's right here. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to click on this SVG file, birthdaycake.svg, and open it. And as you can see, all the layers are showing. So it's going to involve lots of different cuts to make this birthday cake, as you can see. Right now, all of these cuts are in one giant chunk. If I move it, it just all moves around. And what I want to do before I separate these is I want to resize it, because that cake is going to be super small. Each one of these squares on my screen is a 1-inch square, and I want my cake to be about 2.5 to 3 inches. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move my shape up here at the top, grab this corner. When it turns into an arrow, I'm going to click down, and that is going to resize everything proportionally. So everything's changing size. I'm not skewing the shape. Usually with programs, when you're resizing in the corner like that, you have to hold down the Shift key, but for this, you don't have to. So I'm just resizing the cake. I'm going to make it actually about 3 inches wide, so I'm just going to eyeball this piece of the cake right here with some of these grids. So it is about 3 inches now. Now I have all my layers, they're all resized now, and now I'm going to go under Option, Ungroup. And now each piece is separate. I can drag them and move them around on my screen. So I'm going to separate these into different places based on the color that I'm going to use. So anything that's going to be the dark brown is going to be together. These two are going to be a lighter brown. I'm going to have them together. I'm just spacing everything out, basically. That. Got this other lighter colored teal, an icing layer, and I've got lots of different pieces of a candle. So let's see. See, those are 2 different color browns, so I'm going to separate those out. And then I've got these 2-tone candles. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these striped layers, because I don't want the stripes on my candle. So I'm going to highlight that, and maybe I'm just going to click on that and hit delete so I don't have the stripe layers there. I'm going to just simplify everything here. I'm going to line these up. If you notice, I'm trying to line up my shapes within these boxes, so I don't want it hanging over a box when it will fit in some boxes, and I'll show you why here in a little while. It just helps me cut my paper and not waste as much paper. And I also don't want all of these pieces of the flame. I just want the largest piece of the flame. So I'm going to put those down here and use those. And then get rid of all these little pieces. I just don't want that many pieces to have to cut out. So I'm going to put these flames up here. And so since each of these squares is 1-inch square, I have it divided out. I can cut my paper in increments and cover up my whole mat, and not a lot of paper wasted. So for instance, these little yellow pieces, I can cut a piece of yellow cardstock 3 inches by 2 inches and have a piece here. For this white, I can cut a piece of paper 4 inches by 2 inches, and then I have a piece for that cut out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get my mat layers set up for you guys, and then I'll show you exactly why I did this. And I just want to show you what I do with my cardstock scraps. Since I do cut sometimes, I save all of my little scraps here in these bins. I have them sorted by color grouping, so I've got greens and blues, neutrals, and I include yellow and orange in that, and then also pink and red. So I just have these drawers of the little scraps to use for shapes like this with little pieces. Alright, so I cut out all of the pieces that I'm going to be using for this cut, and ordinarily I would just stick them to the mat as soon as I cut them, but for demonstration purposes I'm going to show you how I put these on there. So I've got the computer here, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be lining up the shapes with the pieces of paper. So for this darker brown, I've got these two pieces in a 4x4 shape, so it's 4x4, and I just use my Silhouette cutting mat and I put that at the bottom of my mat. Since the arrow is the pointing at the top, these last 4 pieces will be that cut. So I just line up my brown piece, rub it onto my paper, make sure it stays really good, and then I've got one piece there. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with all of these pieces around my whole mat until I'm done. So this is going to be my 2 icing layers. I decided to use the same brown for these because I didn't have another brown color. So I'm just going to put that as my next little spot here. And for my darker brown, I have this 3x4 piece cut, and it goes at the very top of my mat. You can see. And the only thing I want to point out with you guys is I cut these pieces bigger. For these 2 candle pieces, I got them at 1 inch by 2 inch pieces, but I cut these a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread these out just a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to have this piece lined up with these corners here. So that way it actually is a little bit bigger than 1 inch. I don't like leaving pieces 1 inch or smaller because sometimes that piece doesn't just have enough stick behind it to stick. So I cut these about 1.5 inches. I decided to make this candle the same color as this layer. So I'm just going to stick the rest of my pieces on and then we'll get cutting. Alright, so I got all of my pieces attached and now we're going to get ready to cut. So I turned my machine on. Again, I'm going to load my mat, line it up with that little arrow, and then hit load cutting mat. So my machine's ready to cut. We just have to get the computer ready to cut. Alright, and to cut SVGs, you have to do one extra step that you don't have to do when you're using Silhouette files from the Silhouette library. You have to get these ready to cut. They're just images right now, so I'm going to highlight all of the images, and I'm going to go to this piece with the scissors, and you have the option of automatically they show up as no cuts. You can cut around the edge, cut all the shapes, perforate just the edges, or perforate all of the individual shapes. So what we want to do is just cut. It doesn't matter if you hit cut edge or cut because all of our shapes are already separated out. So if you cut around the edge, you can see it just highlights all of those places around all of the edges, and we'll just do that. So then I'm going to X out of that. So now these are all officially ready to cut, and we're going to work on sending them to our Silhouette Cameo. And we do that by sending the cut to Silhouette. I have my same settings saved, so now I'm just going to hit cut and we're going to watch it cut. Alright, it's done cutting, so we're going to hit unload. And now we have all of our cuts on our mat here. And one thing I like to use on some smaller pieces, none of these are too small, but for some of these that are a little bit on the small side, if I can't just pick them up with my fingers like that, I will use this spatula tool. It comes in handy to get things off of your mat, especially if they're a lot smaller than this. So I just have that tool with me ready to go. And my cuts turned out to be really perfect. Sometimes the cuts, mess up here and there. If one of them looked wonky or the paper had come off, you can just do that one cut again. It's no big deal. Miscuts do happen every once in a while, and it's totally okay. So if one just messes up, just do it again. That's why we cut our paper down to these smaller pieces so that we're not wasting a ton of paper even if we do have a mess up. And then we'll assemble this piece. We're done with the Silhouette Cameo now. Since my cuts turned out well, I'm just going to turn off my machine and close my computer, and then we'll work on assembling this back at my normal camera station. Alright, I'm just going to take all these pieces off, and I'm going to use Tombow multi-purpose adhesive. It's just a liquid adhesive to assemble all these pieces. I'm just going to take all of these off, and if there are any miscuts that don't cut all the way through the paper, like right there, you can just rip it off, and usually it'll look good. But if you get a fuzzy edge, you can just use an X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors and cut off that little bit of fuzzy edge. But usually the Silhouette Cameo makes really pretty edges. And with a shape that's so complicated like this one, generally I'll have my computer still open to the actual shape so that I can use that as a guide for how to assemble all of the pieces. For this one, I'm just winging it. And here are my last pieces. And this piece of paper is paper tray ink cardstock, and it is much thicker, so I will have some fuzzy edges on my paper tray ink paper sometimes. I did get a fuzzy edge left on this paper tray ink paper, so I'm just going to use my scissors, cut off that little fuzzy bit, and then it looks good. So it's time to assemble all of these pieces. I'm just going to use the Tombow and assemble them. Line up the edges. Sometimes I just hold it around the edges and make sure that those two pieces line up nicely. So for this, the sprinkles show through, and the sprinkles are this white color. So I have these layers going like that. And again, I'll pinch these around the edges to make sure everything's lining up just right. And then do the next one. Alright, that goes on top of the cake. One thing I love about Miss Kate's cuttables is their SVG files end up looking really, really cool when they're all built up. You can see you get a lot of dimension on that with all of those different layers building up. I just think it looks really cool that way. I'm going to get this done. This is the last. Oops, I got some glue squeezed out there, so I'm using my finger to kind of pick that up. I don't want the glue to show through very much. Get that lined up. That looks good. So then I've got my candles, and I noticed there's a little bit of fuzzy on this orange candle too. So I use my scissors to just cut those fuzzies off. Alright, so my candles, I'm just going to stick them on here with just a tiny dot of adhesive at the bottom. And there it is. It did take a little bit of planning and a little bit of time to get all the layers assembled, but it turns out so cute. I mean, how cute is that cut? You would not get something quite so layered using a manual die cutting machine like you can easily get with the Silhouette Cameo and other electronic die cutting machines. So there is the cake. And I cut this birthday cake out because it's going to be my mom's birthday soon. I'm making a birthday card for her. So that just shows you from start to finish how to use an SVG cut file and gives you some more information on the Silhouette Cameo. I hope you guys enjoyed this Wild Wednesday. I'll be back next Wednesday with another Cameo tutorial for you guys. So be sure to subscribe to my channel, like us on Facebook, and check out the SP blog. And I will catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.